Well, that was long. If you don't know, we have the scrutiny, the second scrutiny for those who are preparing for the Easter sacraments. And so during the scrutiny Mass itself, it's different readings. So we had all different readings at this Mass than we did at the other two. I prepared one homily, and it was on the other readings. But the themes actually still match. 25 years ago, The Matrix came out. This month, 25 years ago. That's hard to believe. You know, time goes by very fast. Great movie. But 25 years ago, The Matrix came into our world. If you don't remember, if you haven't seen it yet, I think some of our young people maybe just haven't seen it. Some people maybe just never wanted to see it, but many of you have. But for those who haven't, just a reminder, The Matrix is this movie about machines, AI, kind of was ahead of its time, have enslaved humanity. And so there's this, and the way that they've enslaved humanity is by creating this fake digital world called the Matrix. And the Matrix is where all of where humans, their consciousness is alive, but they don't know that they're living in a fake world. They don't know they're living in a dream world. Well, there's these other humans who have become free, and they form this coalition, and their whole goal is to free the rest of humanity. And so eventually, while they're trying to free the rest of humanity, there's this one guy, his name is Cypher. And Cypher eventually changes his mind. He doesn't want to help set people free anymore because he prefers the virtual world. And there's this very kind of regrettable scene where Cypher, he's in the Matrix, he schedules this meeting with this avatar of one of the machines, and they're having dinner at this really nice, fancy, fake restaurant. And Cypher is betraying the other freed humans. And he's telling this machine that he just wants to come back into this fake world, and he wants to be rich. And then he takes a piece of steak, puts it in his mouth. He says, "I know this is fake, but it's so good." See, Cypher preferred the dream world to the real world. You know, in our second reading that we actually just heard proclaimed, you know, at the very end of it, it says, "Awake from your slumber." You know, in the scriptures themselves, sleep is always looked at as spiritual death. It's never a good thing. It's kind of like daylight savings, you know? How many of us wanted to get out of bed this morning? But here we are. There's the temptation to remain where we are, to remain in our captivity. And that's what Cypher does. He remains in his captivity. He wants to go back. He doesn't want to be free. He wants to live in the dream world. Well, in the gospel that we had this weekend, not the one that I just read for you, it's John 3. And we hear the summary of the entire gospel, that famous verse, "God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son, that all who believe in him will never die, but have eternal life." And then right after that, this is what we hear. "The light came into the world, but people preferred darkness to light." The people preferred darkness to light. They preferred their old life instead of the new life that Jesus is proposing. And so I think for us, this is what we need to meditate on. How do we prefer the darkness rather than the light of the world, who is Jesus, who has come to set us free? And in our first reading from the other Masses, I'm just going to give you a quick summary. Here's what's going on. The Jewish people, their city is Jerusalem. And in the holy city of Jerusalem, eventually these people come, these Gentiles, and they burn down the city and they kick them out. And so the historians, the people who wrote the second book of Chronicles, want to clarify why this has happened. And so they kind of go through historically what's going on to explain why they no longer are welcome in the city. And so here's the history of what happened. The people added infidelity to infidelity. In other words, God's people have not followed the covenant, and they've broken the covenant over and over again. Later, they have defiled the Lord's temple. And that basically means that not only have they been unfaithful to the covenant, but they have committed the sin of idolatry. They love other things more than God. They love other gods, right? So they defile the temple. And then God sends these messengers, these prophets, to call them back to true, authentic worship. And what happens? The Israelite people, they consistently do not listen to the prophets. They reject them, and they remain stubborn. They don't listen. They don't turn their hearts back to the Lord. Instead, they keep going in their sinful ways. And finally, the Lord is so grieved that they won't turn their hearts back to him, that when these Gentile people come to destroy the city, he allows it. He allows it. He allows the temple to be burned, to be destroyed, and he allows them to be kicked out of the holy city. And at the very end of this reading from Chronicles, King Cyrus, this Gentile king from Persia, comes, and he says to the holy people of Israel, you can go home. Your exile is over. You can go home. And here's the saddest part. They didn't. They chose to stay. They chose to stay in their exile. My friends, whether it's we choose our darkness over the light of Christ, whether it's we choose the dream world over the real world like the Matrix, when do we choose our exile, our spiritual exile, over the freedom that Jesus desires to give us? And so Jesus comes. God sends his son. Why? Because the people of God, all of us, and I include me, the people of God have been unfaithful to the covenant. They're sinners in need of God's mercy. And so, just like last week we heard the purification of the temple, just like the Old Testament, the Jewish people, they defiled the temple by bringing other gods there, so have we. Whether it's the God of money, the God of technology, the God of sports, whatever it is, you name it, we have struggled to keep God number one. We have brought other gods into our worship, just like the Jewish people. And God has sent his messengers, God sent his son to bring us back to him. And then we get to that haunting line. God sent his son to be the light to the world, and yet people prefer darkness to light. People prefer to stay in their spiritual blindness rather than receive vision. See, the question for you and me this weekend is simply this. Are we willing to leave our spiritual exile and to go home with Jesus and be free? See, Jesus says in the scriptures that God is rich in mercy, and he has sent his son to bring us back to life, to awake us in our spiritual lives. May we turn away from all those things that lead to exile and to go back with Jesus. Go back with Jesus home. I almost forgot my final line. To go with Jesus home to the Father, because it's with the Father that we all want to be.